Hey, my name is James Mulvaney, and in this video we're going to be looking at audio interfaces, which are really important, and you want to make sure that you have a decent audio interface, particularly if you're going to be recording using an XLR microphone like this. Now, to start off with, this video is not for musicians, so if you're recording instruments, I'm not your guy, but if you're going to be recording spoken word or podcasts, or you want to broadcast live, that's what I do, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So let's get started. Alright, so welcome to my channel. My name's James. I help broadcasters start their careers. I help people launch radio stations and podcasts, and I've been doing this for the past 15 years, helping entrepreneurs get results. Now, audio interfaces is what we're going to be talking about today. I'm always doing videos like this one, so if you find this video useful, at the end of it, please hit that subscribe button, and if you could give me a like, that'd be great too. Specifically today, we're going to be looking at the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, which is really popular, and is kind of like an entry-level audio interface. We're going to be comparing it with the Audient ID4, which is really good, and I've used this for a long time. And also, we're going to be looking at a more expensive audio interface, which is the Apollo Twin X. And there's one benefit of this interface which I really like, which is you can actually run plugins within the audio interface. So you can make real-time compression, you can add filters and gates and all that kind of EQ and stuff like that to your voice to make it sound even more exciting, and I'll be showing you how to do that as well. So without further ado, let's get started. The first audio interface I wanted to look at today is this one, which is the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. Now, I've been using this here in my home office for the past sort of 5 years. I probably upgraded to the Audient about a year ago, but even before setting up my sort of home office here, we've been using this commercially in our studios and in our office at Radio.co and Podcast.co for like probably the last 10 years. There's been a few reiterations in recent years of this audio interface, but fundamentally it's stayed the same. This is a workhorse. The reason I first got one of these simply is because, you know, to use a USB microphone, you plug it directly into your computer, but you use an XLR microphone like I'm using today. This is the Neumann TLM 103 that I'm speaking to you actually right now. You need phantom power. So all of these audio interfaces we're looking at have got phantom power. That's the key thing if you want to use an XLR mic that you'll need, specifically if it's a condenser microphone. Not all dynamic microphones will need phantom power. For example, the Shure SM7B, which is really popular, I'm going to be doing some comparisons later in this video, doesn't need phantom power. However, it is very gain hungry, and we'll get onto that a bit later. So what do I like about the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2? First of all, this is a kind of budget level audio interface. This only costs around about $100. I think it's about £100, and it has two XLR inputs, so you can immediately have two microphones if you're recording in stereo, or for most people you might have one mic for you and one mic for someone else in your studio, perhaps a co-host or a guest. It has these two dials which light up, and I'll show you some fancy B-roll of how this works right now, which basically will, you know, show you when you're peaking. So if that goes red, it means your signal input is too loud. You need to turn down the gain for that mic. That is really useful, especially when you're first getting started. Perhaps you've not got experience working with audio equipment, and you know, you don't know how to set the gain. Well, it's a visual cue. So if it's going red, you know you need to turn it down. You want to be hitting that yellow occasionally, but you don't want to be going into the red at all. Unless maybe you're screaming off the top of your head or something. But when you're just doing normal spoken voice, you should really never be going to red, but yellow is okay. Also, headphone out, really important. You know, one of the main things that all of these three audio interfaces offer is headphones and also monitor out. If you have a decent pair of speakers or monitors, studio monitors, I've got some Bose speakers here, for example, on my desk, you'll notice a drastic improvement in the audio quality versus just connecting your speakers directly to the Mac output or your PC output, a regular sound card. This effectively is an extension of your computer. It works as a sound card, but actually just for listening to music or for, you know, audio editing, playing back content that you've recorded, you'll notice a drastic increase in performance and audio, which is another reason why I really like to use these interfaces. So even if you're not actually recording, you know, just your day-to-day use of the internet, you know, you're watching YouTube videos or you're playing music on Spotify, you'll notice it sounds better through one of these. Obviously, these have all got different digital to analog converters inside. The actual chip that sits inside this and converts the digital signal through your computer into analog is all done within inside this box. So really that's it about the Focusrite. Let's move on to the Audient. Alright, so moving on, the next audio interface I wanted to look at today is the Audient. Now, this ID4 I have here is the smaller version. This can be powered directly off USB, just like the Focusrite. What I like about this is it's kind of like a desktop controller. So you have all of the dials and switches here kind of at your fingertips. In comparison to the Focusrite, this is kind of designed a bit more to integrate directly with a digital audio workstation or DAW, such as Logic or Audition or whatever it is you might use. You can control the mix of the input, which is basically direct monitoring the microphone from here, or if you've got an instrument on the front, and the signal coming out of your computer, which I think is quite useful. This is I think a step up in terms of audio quality. The reason I switched from Focusrite to the Audient in the first place was because I believe this has got a slightly better sound quality. I'll do some demos in a minute and you can decide which you think sounds best. But I thought, okay, ultimately this is $1,000 mic I'm using here. So do I want to use a $100 audio interface, or do I want to use a $250 interface, whatever it costs? I think it's around that mark. And sort of get a slightly better quality, and I was quite happy with the results for this for a year until recently when I purchased an Apollo Twin. And the reason I did this was because for many years I used a audio processor for my microphone, which is known as the DBX286X. It's common as hell, everyone's got one now. And it gives you a limited ability to process and enhance your microphone. I kind of used it so much to the point where I kind of got sick of the sound of it, so I actually stopped using it and actually disabled processing altogether. But just because I like the sound of this microphone connected to this audio interface, recently I decided I wanted to introduce processing again. Now, the great thing about the Apollo Twin, it's kind of similar in design to this in terms of you have all of your buttons and dials kind of on your desktop, which is great if you want to sort of turn things up and down, you want to mute your speakers, or you want to turn up your headphones. It's all there in front of you. Apollo Twin has got two inputs, which is good, but also you can run plugins directly on the interface. So on the interface is what is known as DSP chips, which are digital signal processing chips. These will actually run the plugin directly on the device. Okay, so when your microphone goes in, it will then process depending on the settings you set, and there's a control panel on your computer which allows you to tweak the different settings. There's probably 100 different plugins that you can choose from. Some are free, which are bundled with the device. Some you have to pay a bit more for, but they're not too expensive, and they really allow granular control over how you want to shape the sound which is coming in. Now, I'm not an audio engineer, okay, so I really, when it comes to setting compression and stuff, I rely heavily on presets because I really have no idea what I'm doing when it comes to that stuff. But trial and error, you play around until you get a sound that you like. You can run multiple plugins on top of each other, so you can effectively set up a chain. So you can set up an EQ followed by a compressor, and you can make a really good sound from this Apollo Twin. And actually what you're hearing now is with the compression, and what I wanted to do later is show you without the compression so you can kind of compare the difference, and I'll show you across a couple of different microphones as well. So yeah, I've only been using the Apollo Twin for about, a month. It's made by a company called Universal Audio, but very, very happy with it. So what I wanted to do now is give you some demos of each of these units, compare them using two different microphones. I'm going to be using this mic here, which is the Neumann TLM 103, and also another high-end microphone which is dynamic versus this condenser microphone. The other microphone I'm going to be using is a Shure SM7B, which is hugely popular amongst podcasters and also in live broadcast applications. So let's dive in and give these guys a shot. Okay, so now I'm recording via my Neumann TLM 103, and it's connected to the Universal Audio interface directly into my Mac here, recording on the DAW. Now, you might notice I have got some compression applied. The cool thing about the Universal Audio interface compared to the Focusrite or the Audient ones is you can actually run software within the audio interface. That kind of sounds a little bit kind of voodoo, I know, but what that means is the software actually you can control it through a computer, but the plugins will reside on the device, and the device has 2 DSP chips built in, which stands for digital signal processing. Basically, it means it's got like its own CPU. This has got a lot of benefit because it means that you can really tweak the audio coming into your computer, and you can shape the microphone however you want. And there's dozens and dozens of these plugins available. Most of them are modeled on like old vintage analog equipment. So, for example, right now I'm using 2 analog sort of style, old school inserts. One is the Avalon and one is the Neve 88RS Legacy. And through those 2 plugins, I've got some compression, there's some EQ applied, and I think it sounds pretty good. It kind of gives you that old retro sounding microphone compression, which is what a lot of people go after. Now, if I turn these off, these are now switched off. This is what this microphone sounds like, completely unprocessed, untreated. So you can see that it does make a big difference. Again, if I switch these back on, that's with the Avalon enabled, and then that's with the Neve enabled. Everything sounds bigger and brighter and sort of more present, which I really like. And you can kind of go and spend as much as you want on these plugins. Some are bundled free with your audio interface, which I think is awesome. But you can also purchase additional ones as well. And you can stack them up as well, which gives you great flexibility. So you can have like compression and then a really good EQ, and you can really make them sound awesome. So tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think this sounds better with the compression like so? Or does it sound better without? Very, very different sounds. I'm sure you'll agree. So let's test this device with another microphone. Okay, so now I have the Shure SM7B connected to my universal audio device. Very different microphone because this is a dynamic microphone, not a condenser microphone, but it sounds great. I'm sure you will agree. Again, right now, I have got the 2 plugins disabled. I'm using slightly different plugins here. I'm using the Tube Tech compressor and also the Neve presser and equalizer as I was before. I'll put the details of these plugins in the description. Now let's switch these things on. Now both of these have been enabled, and as you can hear, this sounds completely different. It gives the microphone a lot more presence, and it kind of gives that radio sound that you might used to be hearing. So this is the Shure SM7B being routed via my universal audio interface with compression turned on, and this is what it sounds with the compression turned off. Completely different sound, but I thought I'd give you an example of exactly what this thing can do. So let's move on to the next audio interfaces, and we'll compare both these mics and how they sound untreated on both the Scarlett 2i2 and the Audient ID4. Okay, now I have got the Shure SM7B connected via the Audient ID4 interface. The thing I've noticed about this is I have to have that gain turned up to max before I can even hear myself. If I just turn it down a quarter, you can barely hear me. It just goes really, really quiet. So you need to turn that preamp up as loud as it will go before you can kind of get a clean signal. Now, having said that, I think this Audient is doing the Shure SM7B justice. I haven't got what is known as like a cloud lifter or a FET head, which is quite commonly used when using kind of like a cheaper audio interface, just to give this signal a boost. It's just going straight into the audio interface. And actually, I'm not getting too much background noise, and I'm quite happy with how this microphone sounds. But as I say, turn the gain down a bit, you can barely hear me. It really has to be completely up to the top before you can get a usable signal from this. But there we go. That's the Audient ID4 with a Shure SM7B. Now I'll show you the TLM 103. Okay, so now I'm recording via the Audient ID4 interface via the Neumann TLM 103 microphone. This is what it sounds like. I have the gain just probably a little past 12 o'clock on here. Sounds pretty good. Obviously, this microphone is no way near as gain hungry as the Shure SM7B. Another thing to note is I've switched now phantom power on. This microphone does require phantom power to boost its signal and actually to operate, because otherwise you don't get any signal at all. So here we go. The Neumann TLM 103 routed in via the Audient ID4 interface. What do you think it sounds like? Comment below and let me know. So now I have a Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 connected to my computer, and I'm recording through the Shure SM7B mic. As you can see, now, again, we've got the gain turned up as loud as it will go. I can, on my headphones, I can hear this there is a slight background hiss. I don't know how clear you'll get that on the recording, but it's certainly noticeable when I compare it to the Audient. And you know, I think this preamp on this particular audio interface just isn't up to the job of carrying or boosting this where you really need it to be. If I turn the gain down at all, you'll notice that I kind of go off and you can barely hear what I'm saying. So it needs to be again fully turned up to max. But yeah, there's a clear hiss in the background. I think the preamps are really struggling to provide sufficient gain for this microphone. Now, there is a way around this. A lot of people will buy what is known as a cloud lifter or a FET head, which are two little different devices. They will switch phantom power on, and those two inline devices will effectively boost the signal coming out of this microphone, which makes it more usable with cheaper audio interfaces such as the Focusrite. I'm still not knocking this interface. It's $100, and I've been using this for probably 10 years, and it's really good. So, you know, if you're on more of a budget and you don't want to go out and spend $400 on an Audient or $700 or $800 on a universal audio device, this is still really fine. If you're just thinking about starting out, you want to record a podcast, this will be great. Perhaps you want to consider buying a cloud lifter or a FET head, though, if you're using the SM7B, or just use a different microphone. You know, any other dynamic mic, or if you got any condenser mic, will be absolutely fine into the Focusrite. But let's switch over to the TLM. We'll show you what that sounds like. Now I have got my favorite combo, which is the Neumann TLM 103 connected to the Focusrite. You'll see it sounds big, it sounds bright, and we like the sound of this. This microphone I've been using for years and years and years, connected to a Focusrite with no issue at all. That was the combo I probably used from like 2015 till about 2019 or 18, and until I switched to the Audient, and then obviously more recently to the Universal Audio. I think this is a good sounding microphone, and I think it sounds great through this particular preamp. I don't know why, I just think it sounds amazing. But tell me what you think in the comments. We've obviously compared now 6 different combinations, or technically 8 if you can count the with processing and without processing on the Universal Audio. But I want to know what you think sounds best. Which combination of microphone and preamp do you prefer the most? Stick them in the comments below, and we'll get the discussion going. All right, so there we go. We have 3 different preamps, or 3 different audio interfaces, all at completely different price points. But go out and buy one, because they ultimately make the difference between good sounding audio and really great sounding audio. All right, take it easy. Hey, I'm James, founder of Radio.co. Before you go anywhere, I've got an interesting question for you. Do you know the difference between a radio station that launches and becomes very successful, gets lots of listeners and does very well, and a radio station that perhaps kind of doesn't launch very well and disappears within a few months, doesn't really get much attention? Well, I've put together a checklist which will illustrate to you in a very simple way the 5 key differences between radio stations that launch, do well, versus radio stations that launch and kind of disappear. You can download your free copy over at radio.co/checklist today. Find out exactly how you can make the most out of your radio station. That's radio.co/checklist. Go and grab your free copy. I'll see you there.